before we started really working together, I was at a place where I was putting 25. I remember one week I put 28 meetings on the calendar, but they were 30, these short time slots. And so you very quickly got me in a place where I could close on a first call.
Yeah, I think very quickly, what, you tripled your close percentage? Like it felt
I
like
yeah, I definitely tripled the close percentage, going up more towards, 25, 26%. It depends on which of those months you're comparing it to, because you could also say I quadrupled my close percentage based on some of those months before. About 3 weeks after I initially paid you and started working with you, I went to my wife and I said, I'm ready to buy that truck. And she said, can we afford it? And I said, yeah. And she said, then have at it, have a heyday, And so I drove 6 hours to get the exact one I wanted, and I came back with my $100,000 truck. There are very few things in this world where if you change this, it leads to a one-for-one adjustment to your revenue. If you double your close percentage, you double your revenue.
Well, I'm here today with Ryan. Ryan, I know we haven't been working together for too long, but I know the results have been astronomical right out of the gate. So wanted to get you on here, ask you a couple questions in hopes that you can kind of share your experience with working with me directly and kind of where we're at now, and then the trajectory that you see us going here over the next couple weeks, couple months. So it's great.
You bet. Yeah, my name is Ryan Stoltzfus. I am a founder of a company. I'm a career coach and a founder of the Job Hackers Network. I think a lot of you guys are going to relate to my story because it's been pretty up and down, coming from the corporate world and then trying to start your own deal and be able to financially bear the weight of moving away from that. I've been through a lot of different stages, Austin, and for a long time, even after I'm about 14 months out of quitting my corporate job, a long time after that, probably for the next 8 months or so, it was pretty difficult to hit compensation that matched to what I was making before. And even though I had hit it at one point, it would dip. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was really experiencing before, Austin, was I was able to get calls on my calendar, but I just wasn't closing effectively. And as a true to the bone coach, it's hard to close. We're on a sales call and I want to coach. And so I go into safety zones or not even safety zones, but just where your heart is like bared towards somebody and you can help them. And so you start coaching. And you helped me see pretty quickly that was, pretty catastrophic to the ability to then, transition it to a program ask and a program sale.
Yeah.
We started having some conversation and I let you know that was a huge gap for me. Close percentage was probably my number one gap. And you've highlighted it and I can pull out a spreadsheet and I can see it. When we have the ability to just make a few tweaks from a sales perspective and, double our close rate, what do we do to the back end? We double the revenue. Yep. And as a business owner, there are 300 different things that are just like all these butterflies flying around to distract us. And, one day it's funnels and click funnels and blah, and email sequences and like, what's broken? Honestly, when I stepped back and I simplified it and just realized this stuff everything does not have to be perfect. That doesn't create clients.
Yep.
Being able to get on the phone with somebody and help them see whom you've helped and how they could be one of those individuals, and then just say, hey, this is simple. And be able to go for the close was something that I think you really empowered me with from a process perspective. And then also just from a, giving me the help that I needed and the support that I needed and a little bit of, a confidence boost from the sales side. I'm confident as a coach, but from the sales side to be able to confidently go for the close.
Yeah. What was your close percentage when we had first started working together?
Well, it varied. I mean, it varied a bit, but it was, I had one month where it was 6%. I had a month where it was 8%. I had a month where it popped up to 16, but I didn't do very many calls. So it was always under 20%. And yeah, it had been as bad as almost 5% at times.
which is just catastrophic to a business because you've obviously figured out something to get leads on the calendar, but
Yeah.
it's exciting. You're like, yeah, I got 4 calls today and 5 tomorrow. But if you're closing it,
It's almost like fake work. It's almost like make
exactly.
work. And I teach people how to go after high ROI work in their job search. Like I know all about like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. 20% of our input creates 80% of our output. That's the way it is for a job search. That's really the way it should be for us as business owners. Is we've got to think about the things where, you know, we can scale ourselves, and scale is really what we're going after. First, it's not. First, what we're going after is enough money to be able to not work in the corporate world. If we're really honest, that's what we're going after. Then ultimately, yeah, sure, we'd like to scale, but that's not the first thing we're trying to accomplish. And I struggled with even that first thing.
Yeah. Well, I think like 5, 6, 10, even 15 or 20%, like you knew you were leaving money on the table. And you told me that.
Yeah.
Like, when we first had the conversation, you're like, I know that I'm leaving a shit ton of money on the table. And if you can just help me be a better closer, I can scale my business aggressively. And that's what we did. I remember we did our first session and things took off from there. And then I'd love for you to share kind of like what that work looked like briefly, and then kind of the next steps that we took to continue scaling and not slow down the momentum.
Yeah. So before I even got into the initial one-on-one call with you, I was able to get a lot of help from committing to listening to you.
Yeah.
Before we can take on any process, like we have to commit that we're going to change. We have to commit like, okay, I'm going to step into this. And for some of us, putting down money helps us do that. Some of us put down money and we still never really actually committed. But for me, that's just one of my baselines. If I'm going to invest, I'm going to commit to my energy and time going into that. So that was big, because with that, I was then able to watch some of your training videos that weren't even the one-on-one stuff in a different light, and break some of it down. And you eventually gave me a copy of what I had pulled out of your conversation, but I got that from the group coaching calls too. I think I went to a group coaching call 1 or 2 before we got on our first one-on-one call. And I will tell you, my close rate already started to be helped by just saying, I'm going to follow a process. I'm going to follow something that is proven before. Because really in my calls before that, I was winging it. I've had sales jobs in the past. I am an okay salesperson. And so I stepped into it with this very strong coaching capability and being an okay salesperson and just thinking like, I can do this. And yeah, and honestly, I couldn't optimize on it. I couldn't get it to where I wanted to get it. And then here, I want to fast forward you, or not even fast forward. It's in that moment where it really just became very apparent to me, back to the Pareto principle, that I was putting a lot of activity into something where I could put less and get a higher outcome from it.
Yep.
And I wanted a greater return. I wanted my energy to be more compounded. And so even if I am the one doing the sales calls, even if I can't give it away to somebody else, but I am the one doing it, I could still close more and I can still get more ROI out of it. And so before we started really working together, I was at a place where I was putting 25. I remember one week I put 28 meetings on the calendar, but they were 30, these short time slots. And so you very quickly got me in a place where I could close on a first call and do a little bit longer of a time slot, but just way more focused and way more value. There were some slight tweaks like that you helped me make. And obviously there's a lot more to it than just that, but there were some slight tweaks in there that really just kind of helped me turn on a dime, if you will.
Yeah. I think very quickly, what, you tripled your close percentage. Like it felt like,
yeah, I definitely tripled the close percentage, going up more towards, 25, 26%. It depends on which of those months you're comparing it to, because you could also say I quadrupled my close percentage based on some of those months before. But getting to where I was closing more 1 out of 4. And hey, that's pretty good. I mean, I always have heard you're supposed to be able to close at least at a 20% close rate. That's what I've always heard about this coaching world. But I never really had been able to get there.
Yeah. And I think people kind of set the bar low. They're like, man, if you can just close at 20%, you're doing fine. Where it's like me, I really push the people I
Mhm.
work with and myself to close at 30, 40, 50%. I mean, I've had months where I've closed at 55, 60%.
Yeah.
And on that month, I did 485K in revenue. So it's like,
Mhm.
when you keep all things the same and all you do is strategically bump close percentage little by little by small tweaks, like changing the length of your meetings, right? That small tweak bumps close percentage, being more authoritative and asking better questions and not overcoaching. So we're finding these little things to optimize, and maybe this bumps it by 1%, this bumps it by 3%. But when you compound it all together, you go from 5 or 6 to 2025, and then we're
Yeah.
still stacking and building on top of that. So
There's so many things in front of us, Austin, as founders and as company owners, that we think, well, if I make this change, then it might.
mhm.
And we think about, like, even going back to a funnel perspective, we've all messed around with funnels and things like that. Well, if I A/B test this title, and if I change this VSL, or if I change my intro, or if I do this, and we never really know the outcome of it. It's all relatively arbitrary. There are very few things in this world where if you change this, it leads to a one-for-one
Yep.
adjustment to your revenue. If you double your close percentage, you double your revenue.
Yep.
If in the process you don't create any expenses, which I would say you don't need to do any expense to be able to double. You just need to be more effective when you have that at bat and you're at the plate.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm excited for you because this was kind of the plan all along. You were like, I need to be a better closer. Because
Mhm.
you had talked to me about a team, and I looked at you and very honestly, I was like, Ryan, like you're not ready for a team. Number one,
Mhm.
your company isn't at a size that you can afford to employ a closer, and they're going to
Right.
make money to be happy. And
Right.
number two, you just respectfully, you're not a good enough closer yet, right? Because if you're not a good enough closer yet, who's going to teach these people how to be a great closer? And I was like, let's just do the work. You're smart, you're sharp. Like, we're going to get this fixed very quickly, which we did. And then it's like, as soon as we get this fixed, and you can scale the business to 50, 60, 100,000 a month, we can then
Mhm.
employ one or two or three closers.
Yeah.
And those are the next steps that we've taken. So I know I went out, and I'm excited about the three guys that you have.
Mhm.
I'm really confident in them. I love spending time with them and working with them, and working with you on it just reminds me of how many little things there are to do. I mean, everything from round robin calendars and
Mhm.
CRM integrations. And once they close a client, what are the onboarding SOPs? So
Yeah.
it's fun to
Yeah.
kind of hold your hand through that process. And I'm seeing
Mhm.
it come to fruition. And it's just exciting that here in the next couple of weeks, maybe the next 30 days, by the time somebody's watching this, you're off the phone. It's like you are a CEO working on
Yeah.
the business rather than a salesperson to yourself working in the business. And I think that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had lots of goals along the way. And for me right now, as I'm delivering this, we're at the beginning of November, and I had a goal that when it came to the last 2 weeks of December, I was going to be off the phone, and I was going to be able to take 2 weeks of vacation in Mexico with my family and not be taking sales calls. And we're there, and we accomplished that.
Yep.
And that's a pretty big deal for me, because what I had on my calendar was 15 to 20 hours per week that I was locked up in a one-to-one engagement with somebody.
Yep.
A one-to-one engagement with somebody, we all know, is not scalable. You're not giving yourself an exponential return on anything that we do one-to-one. Everything we do, we try to do one-to-many.
And you only had a 5% chance to close that
Yeah,
person.
yeah, that isn't, yeah, that too. So it's
So
not optimized in that time.
yeah.
But that for me, quality assurance and delivery to my clients is my number one.
Yep.
I personally don't need to have $1 million or $3 million a year business because I want to have a $1 million or $3 million a year business. I do it because I know the number of individuals I will be able to impact and lives I'll be able to change by having a business that big that has appropriate packaging, where the delivery, the quality assurance is just nailing it. And then in that process, I get to help feed a couple of families from a closer perspective. Like, that's exciting. That's why I want employees to be able to make that pass forward impact. And so it allows me to really use my business in a different way than what I really set out to do in the beginning. I set out in the beginning to replace my income.
Yeah.
And now I have the platform to truly change people's lives from multiple different angles. And that's really huge. You mentioned earlier, as you were talking about the transition, I stepped into the initial relationship with you with a staircase in mind and said, hey, if I can get to this from a closing perspective myself, then I will do this, because it just felt natural and reasonable. If I can get to this financial outcome and closing percentage, then hey, I will take. And I think I committed very early on, I will go to this next level with you. Well, honestly, we only had one sales call together, you and I, one-on-one. And I was there. And I said, okay, we're there. Now, how do we move early? And so we ended up moving to that, building out of the sales team, after only just one-on-one.
Yeah, I think you might have done like 2, maybe 3 group calls, and then
the group calls, but only one actual one-on-one with you. Yeah, and the group calls are great. The camaraderie and being able to jump in there and get into the weeds on some of the things where we're kind of putting our heads in our butts, as founders do sometimes, and we just don't see the forest through the trees, if that's the saying, right?
Yep.
And we can kind of get caught up, but it definitely lifts the energy and fuels your cup and gives you energy, but also gives you some guidance as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Ryan, I'm super excited for you, man. Like, this is just the beginning, and I know it feels good. I know you're hitting record breaking after record breaking month, like you're on this crazy trajectory, but honestly, like, we'll look back on this when you have these 3 closers, and you'll probably end up somewhere around 4 or 5. I have no doubt you'll do multiple 7 figures a year, multiple 6 figures a month. Like, I will ensure that happens. Like, I've just done it too many times to let you fail on that. So we'll look back when you're doing 2, 3, 500,000 a month, and like these times we'll just like.
Here's just an anecdotal story. For 3 years now, I've been talking about buying a new truck. 2 solid years, because I remember it started whenever the 2023 Toyota Tundra was being talked about and being theorized. Then it came out, and then you couldn't get access to it, and I didn't have enough money to go out there and get it. And of course, I wanted a TRD Pro and all that stuff. But I thought about that truck, and then eventually it transitioned up a level to Ford Raptor. And right after, about 3 weeks after I initially paid you and started working with you, I went to my wife and I said, I'm ready to buy that truck. And she said, can we afford it? And I said, yeah. And she said, then have at it, have a heyday, And so I drove 6 hours to get the exact one I wanted. And I came back with my $100,000 truck. And that was a landmark for me. I've never had more than a $30,000 vehicle in my life. I'm a pretty regular guy. But to be able to do that and confidently just know that I was in control and that's where I was. I don't have credit card debt. I wasn't living beyond my means. I don't do that. But I was able to just jump there. And I remember sharing the pictures of the truck on our group coaching call. And to me, that was a really, really powerful symbol. And it meant a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, you had a number in mind, right? Like, when I hit monthly revenue X, then I will go buy the truck. And I remember your monthly revenue was very far from that number. Like, when we first started working together, like, you were doing fine, but like, you weren't at that number. Couple group calls.
We were doing fine from a single earner perspective. Having, making more than I was in corporate, but nowhere near, now it's tripled from that in a matter of definitely less than 90 days. I think actually closer to 60 days.
It's incredible. Yeah. Now it's tripled to, I can go buy $100,000 dream truck because I can, I want it and I can afford it. And it's a testament to your hard work, and you deserve it. And you know that I have a Raptor. It's not brand new like yours, but I love my Raptor. And now you're pushing me. You're like, you need to go get yourself a brand new one. They're great. So, but no, I'm really proud of you, man. And your success. If I had to sum up, like, if someone's like, hey, what makes Ryan such like a star student? Like, what makes like, why is he getting success so quickly? One of the first things you told me, you said, if I work with you, I want you to treat me like I'm your closer.
Yeah.
Like, tell me all the bad things that I'm messing up on. Like,
Yep.
I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm open to feedback. Like, just lay it on me. Treat me like I'm
Yep.
your employee that I closed for you.
Yep.
And I did. And I was brutally honest. I'm like, hey, what you're saying here makes sense, but it's in the wrong spot in the call and it's just fucking everything up. And like, we got to fix this, right? So we had a lot of those moments through the group calls and the one-on-one we did. And you were just like, okay, cool. Yep, wrote it down. Got it. And then you just went and implemented it and everything changed. Other people I've worked with, I give them those same things or similar. And then next week we review another call and it's like, hey, we're still doing the same stuff. It was really just your speed to implementation and also your trust in me that like, hey, I don't know. I've never said it like this or done it like this, but Austin says it'll work. Let's try it. And then you, as soon as you started seeing the results, I think you realized that, okay, maybe he knows what he's talking about. And then you just went all in with it.
Yeah, I realized that before. I mean, I realized that before I spend the money, and I pay a lot of attention to things like testimonial videos and stuff like this. And they're just, as a learner, if you really are a learner, you have to be a listener. You have to be an individual that says, I am not the expert. I am an expert, carte blanche, in a specific area, but not in this.
Yep.
So for me to then say, I'm going to go pay an expert, and I'm going to, then on the second stage of working with you, I'm going to employ them as my sales manager, as my person who's going to get these guys up to par. Like, it's honestly, hiring you for what I did as my sales manager, it's a no-brainer. I couldn't go find somebody to work like that for me in the market and do that and have that level of process. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And that's the way I saw it. And yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about doing this, do you have to do a gut check and say, I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to realize I am not the expert in this? Yeah, I think you do. But if you can get there and then say, this is the next stage for me, then you're an idiot if you don't move forward. You're just going to go beat your head up against a wall that you created and that you allowed to still be there in front of you. It's stupid.
Yep.
And I'm not stupid, at the end of the day. So, and I think that most of your listeners are going to look at that and say, well, I'm not either. I'm pretty damn smart. And it, it makes it a lot easier to then go get the right people on your team in the right spots, doing the right things. And then all of a sudden the world opens up to us.
I love that. That's incredible. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you jumping on, hanging out. Like, I'm so proud of you. And like I said in the beginning, like, we've been working together just for a little bit of time now, but I know that your trajectory, like, we'll probably end up doing like an update video to this and put it down below. Cause I know that the next time we do one of these, you'll be like, oh yeah, we just passed like 250K this month, tracking for 300 the next month. Like, I have no doubt in my mind. So I'm really proud of you.
We'll do it.
So
thanks, Austin.
You got it. We'll talk soon.
Bye.